Daedalus frantically worked over his table. Great feathers lay strewn on the ground, along with unused canvas, leather, and broken tools. How had it come to this? Whose fault was it all in the end? He wiped the sweat from his face, some of it dripping onto the arm strap he was attaching to the wing. Theseus? Was this his doing? How in the name of the gods had the boy managed to escape the labyrinth, let alone kill the Minotaur? It was impossible. The secret was out. And now King Minos believed Daedalus had, for some inexplicable reason, given the young hero the key to the labyrinth itself, and in his rage had imprisoned old Daedalus and his son here in Crete's highest tower to await execution. It was madness. King Minos? It was his whore of a wife's fault to begin with, wasn't it? Pasiphae? What kind of a woman falls in love with a bull, let alone mates with one? It was she that bore the monstrosity we now call the Minotaur. He had actually built it for her, the wooden cow in which she would hide herself to seduce the great white bull. He couldn't think of it. And because of her lust, Daedalus, the greatest architect in all Greece, had been forced to construct the labyrinth, a horrifying and inescapable maze to keep her god-forsaken monster in and keep it fed with innocence, a terrible slaughter every 7 years. No, in the end it was the king's fault. It was the king who had refused to sacrifice the great white bull to Poseidon in the first place, as the god had commanded him to. His damned pride and hubris that he could somehow defy a god and not be punished. Well, Poseidon had seen to that, commanding Aphrodite to make the king's wife fall in love with the bull, to lust for it, to... No matter, it was all years ago. Daedalus lifted his blurry eyes from the work to look at his son sitting across the room. He swore even if he were not his own, he would claim this was the most beautiful boy ever to walk the earth. Boy, no, he was a man now, a man of 20, in the absolute flush of life and potency. His only son, his only hope, Icarus. This was the moment. He called his son over and began to meticulously fit the wings to his strong arms, wings he had spent the last several months secretly constructing, spending every free moment studying the movement of the birds as they flew outside the tower's only window. This was it, their final and only chance. The key was the wax. If the wax held, the wings would soar, carrying them far away from this cell and imminent death, through the very skies as the gods fly, to freedom. From far down below, he could now hear the guards ascending the stairs, making their long march up the tower, to their high prison. The time had come. Fastening his own wings to his arms, he led his son to the window, and there they stood for a long moment, in disbelief at what they were about to do. Down below, far down below, rocks, jagged and wet, the crashing sea, death. But out toward the horizon, the sky, blue and clear, the realm of the gods. They would leap together. But first, the warning. My son, fly not too high, not too close to the sun. For though you may want to near the house of Apollo, its heat will melt the wax and your wings will fold. The wax, Icarus, remember. His son nodded. He was confident. He understood. Tearfully, he embraced Icarus one last time, feeling the strength in his son's young shoulders. He could do it. And so, with a final breathless prayer, Daedalus and his son, Icarus, leapt from the window. The sudden fall was terrifying. In free fall, time seems to stop. Your stomach rushes into your mouth and your chest seizes, stealing the very air from your lungs. The rocks rushed up to meet them. But then as one, the men spread their arms, the great wings unfurled and caught the wind, immediately stopping their descent and propelling them suddenly upward, up and out over the sea, soaring into the sky, just as Daedalus had envisioned. His wings worked. Father and son flew. They flew together. It's quiet in heaven, only the sound of the lonely wind. But suddenly Daedalus heard a thrilling and triumphant shout. It was his son. Icarus was laughing, crying out in joy. In his delight, he tried to spin, and then another, elegant and beautiful, more beautiful than any creature since the making of the earth. Perfect. He began to drift upward, his head turned up. Faster and faster he rose, his wings stretched to full. The wind was his. The sky was his. Daedalus shouted, screamed in terror for his son to come back down, please. But Icarus could no longer hear his father. The rush of the wind filled his ears. His own laughter and triumphant cries covered all. And the warmth, the beautiful divine warmth. Yes, the sun was his as well. Glory. The sun was so close now he could nearly touch it. Just a little further. Just a little more. Something broke. Looking to his shoulder, Icarus saw that the wax holding the wings together had begun to melt. They were folding. Suddenly he remembered his father's warning. He had flown too close to the sun. In horror, he watched as one part, then another collapsed and broke loose. He reached out his arms, but there was nothing to hold to. It was too late. Icarus fell, plummeting back down to earth, a streaking meteor shining in the sky. Daedalus cried out in despair for his son, but there was nothing he could do. He watched, helpless, as Icarus shot past him, tumbling down with terrible speed, down toward the distant sea, and his death far below. There is a legend now told of the death of Icarus, that upon hearing the screams and the terrible impact of something crashing into the sea, 3 sirens, daughters of Poseidon, came to see what had happened. At first they thought it was a young god sleeping on the rocks, but soon they realized it was Icarus, in the perfect bloom of youth, beautiful and dead. And so they wept. We end the story of Icarus now with a poem by Oscar Wilde. Here it is. Never regret thy fall, O Icarus of the fearless flight, for the greatest tragedy of them all is never to feel the burning light. I don't necessarily see the story of Icarus as a tragedy or a cautionary tale. In my youth, I even viewed it as a beautiful and enviable death. And every once in a while, even now, when I look back, I ask myself, would it have been better to have lived just one truly glorious moment as Icarus and died, rather than to have lived on for 100 years as cautious old Daedalus? But here's the thing. For one brief moment, we all are Icarus, our faces under the sun, looking up in eternal glorious flight. And then it passes. We fall back. We linger here on earth, remembering. But then we watch our own children grow and strive for the sun. And in our fear, we reach out to hold them safely back. But then we let go and we let them soar. And something deep inside us cries out, fly, Icarus, fly, fly.